Hello, young people. Welcome to the third installment of Newton's Attic Engineering Online. I'm Engineer Bill, and today we're going to build this really cool glider. But before we get started, we've got to get the subscribe. Don't forget to subscribe and like us, and be sure to turn on those notifications. All right, hopefully you've got your parts and your kits all spread out in front of you there. I've got my kit ready to go. And let's get started. So the very first thing you want to do is get the two biggest pieces in the kit. That's the wing here, okay? And then the wings are, if you notice, are labeled left and right. Now be sure, the first thing you want to do is put them right in front of you with the letters down, okay? So I've got my left and my right. It says left right there, right, well, R and L, okay? Put those down on the table so you can't see them, all right? Then we'll grab the other two pieces that kind of look like big long kitchen knives here. We're going to put those in front of us, and we're going to glue those to the top of our wing, just like this right here. We got the side view. Okay, I'm going to just do a little, set it on here. Okay, we're going to glue one right there like that, and the other one right here. Oh, I'll tell you what you need to do. If you haven't already done it, your glue bottle, you have to take a little knife or some pair of scissors or something to snip the end off. Otherwise, the glue won't come out. So go ahead and do that if you haven't already done that, because the next step right now in just a second is we're going to start gluing. Yes, ma'am?
We should make sure that everyone has looked through their kits and that they've confirmed that they have all their pieces, including their clamps.
Yes, so let's make sure you've got all of your pieces, including your clamps. There are 4 new style of clamp this time. Now these little plastic guys right here they've got a bigger grip. They're a little bit easier to use than the binder clips. Okay, a little more versatile there. Make sure you've got all those, and make sure you've gone through and you've got all of your parts. You want them laid out and ready to go.
And if they don't have them, they should wait.
If you don't have your clamps, be sure to wait, because you have to actually clamp things together for them to dry properly. If you don't have your clamps, you're going to have to wait until we send those to you. Very sorry about that if you don't. But I would not go ahead and I would wait on building until you have your clamps, because otherwise things might not glue up and dry properly. Okay.
While we're waiting for them to cut their glue tip off,
yes, sir.
Let's go ahead and we'll talk about why the airfoil looks the way it does.
Okay, let's do that. Yes,
So
and Keith is our resident airfoil expert, but we'll tag team this thing here. How about that?
You'll notice most of the time airfoils, when they're built, are curved, and this one has a step in it. So as you can see in the picture right here, this is kind of what our airfoil does, and the air will pass easily under the bottom of it. Has to go up and over the top step, and it creates a turbulent section of air behind that step, and that allows...
Is our picture up?
Yeah.
Okay, I just can't see it from here. Okay, good.
And that allows the that allows the air to flow over the top and over this turbulent air section in a curved fashion. So it looks like an airfoil to the air, even though it doesn't look like a normal airfoil to us.
I don't think we're live.
It says reconnection successful.
We're getting any chat?
No, we just went dark. All right, I'm going to go back to the main.
So that the glue is towards the nozzle here, and I don't have to squeeze and squeeze. I'm going to put a thin bead. I'm going to go to this camera right here.
Yeah, we might back up just a couple.
Thin bead all along there. Okay, and then I'm going to take my finger and I'm going to spread it all out. Okay, kind of coat the entire surface. It's going to be a very thin coat.
Carter says the video is fine, but there's no sound.
Great.
It should be good. Should be good now.
Okay, apparently I have a little issue with the audio, but if you can hear me, great. If not, just by watching, you should be able to figure out what I'm doing here. Okay, so I'm getting glue all over that surface. It doesn't take very much because the surface area is so huge that the glue will have plenty of strength to hold itself on. And these parts don't get a whole lot of loading. So I'm going to put it down on here. There are little notches that you have to line up with each other. Okay, and I want the front or the leading edge here to line up flush. Okay, and I've got two little notches, one there and then one back down over here. I want to make sure those are both lined up. And make sure everything is nice and straight and perpendicular. You want it, this front edge here straight up and down. You know, you don't want the top part sticking out past it. You don't want it behind the edge either. You want it nice and flush. And I'm just going to kind of push gently down to kind of set it in place. Okay. Oops, I'm off just a hair, but let's see if we can't slide. You don't get a whole lot of time to work with this because this glue does grab pretty quickly. All right, so there's the first one. I'm going to set that one aside right over here out of the way. I'm going to do the same thing to the other one. Oops, and I turned my glue right side up. I shouldn't have done that. All right, get my glue seated in the nozzle here. More glue on there. I'm going to put the cap on and I'm going to leave it on that side so that at least it doesn't run all the way back down to the bottom. All right, I'm taking my finger here and I'm spreading it out. Getting the glue all over this surface here so that I had a good bond. And it's surprising how little glue it takes. You don't have to put a very big bead on there at all. 3 or 4 inches long and about the width of a, I don't know, a shoestring maybe. Maybe not even that wide. All right, got a little bit of glue on my finger here, so I need to wipe that off. And I'm going to put this one in place. All right. Oops, slid out of the way. So just take my time here. And make sure everything is lined up. I'm gonna have to hold on to this part just for a second. I think my piece of foam is just slightly bent. So it's not wanting to line up unless I hold it here, and we give it a few seconds to get kind of tacky here. Okay. Now I have a question, Keith.
Yeah, what do you got?
Why do they call it a K-foil?
Ah, okay. So if you go back and you look at the name of it, Klein Fogelman.
There you go.
Those are the two guys that did the research and came up with this, figured out why it worked. They knew it worked from practical application. They built flat plate aircraft, and they knew that if they added a step to the top of it, that it flew better, that they got a lot more lift out of it. So they went into the wind tunnels and they did some research and they figured out what was happening. And there has been a full-size airplane that has flown with this type of airfoil.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, I don't think it wasn't funded very well, so I don't think it was the prettiest thing in the world. But,
didn't get very, all right.
But it did work.
Okay, and about roughly when were they doing this? When did they design
this? I can't say for sure. It hasn't been that long ago. This is
not
like
okay.
Some of that 1950s and 60s research. This is
World War II stuff?
No, this is like 80s and 90s research.
Oh, wow, okay, all right. So it's a little more sophisticated. Okay, so I've got my two K-foils here glued up. I'm going to set them aside, and I'm going to let those dry. Although those will be pretty stuck well, pretty well.
And make sure when you set them aside that they're on a flat surface.
Yeah, good. Very good. Okay, now the next thing I want to do is grab what's called the fuselage here, and that's this really funny looking piece. Looks like this, okay. And then the other two long, thin wood pieces that have the left and the right, or the R and the L on them, okay? Now, in this case, we want to glue the wooden piece to the foam piece so that the L and the R are visible, because that's going to become sort of important later on, not a big deal. Okay, so I'm going to put, yes ma'am.
We have 2 kids that are on that are going to have to stop briefly between 1:15 and 1:45.
Okay.
And they've got about 3 minutes. Should they go ahead and do this next step?
Yes.
So
3 minutes. Yeah, I
So
think
it
you
can
could
be
probably
dry,
get it. Yeah. You want to allow this stuff to dry. Okay. So I'm going to apply the glue to the wood piece, not the foam piece. And the reason is there's a lot more surface area to the foam, and a lot of it doesn't actually make contact with the wood, so I don't need to put glue where there's no wood going to be. So I'm going to put a few blops here and there. Some of these wider areas, is that showing up? Yeah, all right. All right. And then I'm going to use my finger again to spread this glue. And it doesn't take a lot, guys. We don't need a whole lot of glue. Set my glue aside. I'm going to leave it on its edge there again. So I'm going to start spreading this out, wiping it around. Okay, and then getting it on these long, skinny pieces is a little bit trickier. Try not to get glue down in these little grooves there, because we're going to have to put other parts in there later on, and you don't want the hardened glue to interfere with the parts going in, so keep it out of the, you want the glue only on this top surface here, and I've got a little bit down in there I should probably get at. One thing is the glue tool is pretty good about reaching in there and getting some of that glue out, so I need a little bit more on this skinny part here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put a blob near the end here on this flat part. I'm going to take my finger and I'm going to run it along that really skinny part so I don't get more glue than I really need back here.
Okay. Is the glue water soluble so that it won't?
Uh-huh. You could probably eat this stuff, but don't.
Please don't.
Do not eat the glue. No, I shouldn't even be saying that. All right, so I'm going to put the wooden piece. Hope I got to turn my fuselage over because it goes on this side. Okay, let's get this up here where people can see. And make sure the circle in the front lines up with the circle on the foam, and then you can tell how the contour of each portion of this line up. Now, the one thing you want to be really careful about and make sure of, particularly in the back end here, make sure the funny little hole there, that all those edges line up properly, except for there's one edge of the wood, let's see if we can show this, that extends past the foam, and that's right there. And it's supposed to be that way, so don't try to make the foam fit over this piece of wood. It's a little about 1/8 of an inch wide, or 2 or 3 millimeters wide, and about 3/8 of an inch long, little area here that is exposed, that is not covered by the foam. So you want to make sure, let's see if I can get that even, yeah. Right along in there, that should be exposed, all right? And then back in here in the back, you want to make sure this little slot here, we're going to put a part in there, the rear stabilizer. So you want to make sure the foam and the wood, all those edges are flush with each other. And I got a little glob of glue that I need to get out, a little bead of glue that I need to get out of there because it can interfere later on. Okay. So now I've got this one part, my left side wooden brace. I also want to sight down it and make sure it's reasonably straight. If it's got a bow to it, we're going to fix that in a minute. And we do that by setting it on something flat and putting something heavy on it. Okay, so I've got that side done. Now I'm going to go get the right side. Okay, and don't put the glue on the side with the R on it, okay? I got lucky a minute ago that I didn't do that. A little bit of glue, a little bit of glue, a little bit of glue down here.
Repeat that you should not be able to see the R.
No, you do want to be able to see the R. Oh, when you're putting, yeah, don't put the glue on the side that has the R on it. You'll have trouble. Are we losing touch with mission control there, Keith? Or?
Yeah,
No, it's still
we're
showing.
still live, but we're stopping and starting.
I wonder if it's just heavy usage.
I don't know what's going on.
I'll turn the Wi-Fi off on my phone.
Yeah.
I think mine's already off. Let me check that just to make sure, but I'm pretty sure it is.
Airplane mode here.
Yeah, I'm off. Yeah, go all the way into airplane mode.
Yeah, we just lost it up here too.
Okay, well, hopefully these technical difficulties we were having will kind of slow things down. I know I've had trouble in the past going too fast. Hopefully this will allow people to. We're dead.
Yeah. Okay. Now we're back.
Carter says he just got an audio skywhack.
Skywhack.
An audio skywhack.
Yeah. I don't know why we're. And there it goes again.
Okay. Please bear with us, folks. We're having trouble with all this computer stuff.
Okay, so we're live. I mean, you can keep going.
Okay. Now another thing you want to make sure of is that the two wooden pieces on the bottom are straight across, and that there's not, they're not sitting like this. Okay, they're lined up just flat, just like this. All right, so right straight across there should be a nice straight flat surface. If the foam is pulled up a little bit, that's fine, but you just want to make sure that the wooden parts are all lined up. So I'm going to push this down nice and firm, and I can tell it's already starting, the glue is already starting to do its thing because it's starting to get pretty stiff. So we're going to set that aside and make it flat. And we need to advance on to our next slide. Can we do that there, Captain Keith? Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is assemble the rudder. And before we assemble the rudder here, I want to grab my 4 straws, 3 long ones and 1 short one. And I got my 4 plastic or 3D printed hinges up here. Okay, and mine all happen to be blue. Yours may be a different color. It doesn't make any difference at all what color they are. Okay. So I'm going to assemble these hinges. And there's a very specific way you assemble these hinges. If you look at one side, has the single round part. Okay, let's get that up there. And it has a big groove or slot in it that actually happens to be exactly the same thickness or width as the foam. Okay. That part we want to have facing up. And then if you look at the other part, which is more like a yoke, which has 2 round parts on it, okay? On the other end of it, it has a little tab that sticks out from the rectangular part. And you also want that poking or sticking straight up so that when you push these together, okay, the groove is here and that little tab is right here sticking up. Let's see if I can't rotate that around. If you don't do it that way, it's going to make it a lot harder for the straw to go through. So then I'm going to take any one of the straws, it doesn't matter which one, I'm going to use the short one here, and I'm going to work that down through those 2, okay? And it doesn't really matter, for right now it doesn't matter where it is on the straw, just make sure it's on there, okay? So you got, looks like this. And then I'm going to do it for the next one, I'm going to do it for all 4 of them, and the remaining 3 we're going to push the larger straws onto these hinges, okay? So I'm just going to slide it on there, like so. All right, that's 2. I'm going to do a 3rd one. And then I'm going to do a 4th one. And then I'm going to do a 5th one. And then I'm going to do a 6th one. And then I'm going to do a 7th one. And then I'm going to do a 8th one. And then I'm going to do a 9th one. And then I'm going to do a 10th one. And then I'm going to do a 11th one. And then I'm going to do a 12th one. And then I'm going to do a 13th one. And then I'm going to do a 14th one. And then I'm going to do a 15th one. And then I'm going to do a 16th one. And then I'm going to do a 17th one. And then I'm going to do a 18th one. And then I'm going to do a 19th one. And then I'm going to do a 20th one. And then I'm going to do a 21st one. And then I'm going to do a 22nd one. And then I'm going to do a 23rd one. And then I'm going to do a 24th one. And then I'm going to do a 25th one. And then I'm going to do a 26th one. And then I'm going to do a 27th one. And then I'm going to do a 28th one. And then I'm going to do a 29th one. And then I'm going to do a 30th one. And then I'm going to do a 31st one. And then I'm going to do a 32 And if you're having trouble getting these straws to go through there, and sometimes it can be a little tricky, make sure, look down through the hole there and make sure they're all lined up. Sometimes you have to push it together pretty firmly. Okay, there's also some little hairs, little fibers left over from the 3D print process. You may want to try to wipe, pick some of those out of the way if those are causing a problem. The other thing is just work the end of the straw and kind of twist it and kind of push back and forth. And you should be able to get it to go on there. Okay, so I've got 1, 2, and this is my last one here. 1, 2, 3, and this will be the 4th one. Okay. All right. And there we go. So I've got 3 long ones, 1 short one. I'm going to set the long ones aside. I don't need those right now, but I'll need them in a few minutes. Then I'm going to get my rudder piece right here. That's the small piece right here. Okay, it's one of the smallest piece in the entire kit. Smallest foam piece. Then one of the larger wooden hinges. There are 2. You should have 10 of the larger wooden hinges or longer wooden hinges and 2 short ones. I'm going to grab one of the long ones, and I'm also going to slide it over the top of that straw like so, okay? All right, so right there. Doesn't matter, don't worry about how it's oriented right now, just get it on there. Now, I'm going to slide the plastic part of the hinge, and the part that goes onto the foam here is the part with the big slot in it that has the single round piece, okay? And it slides into, actually I better get some glue in there, didn't I? First thing I'm gonna do is put some glue down in that slot, okay, just a little, and I wanna keep it far away from the part that rotates. One problem that you can encounter if you're not careful is you don't wanna glue the hinge so where it won't rotate. Otherwise you got a problem there. So a little bit of glue just on the back side away from the rotating part here, away from the straw, all right? I'm also going to put a little bit of glue on the back side of this because it makes contact with the foam also. Oops, I just lost my hinge, but that's okay. We'll put that back on in a second. A little bit of, I don't need a whole lot, just a little bit there, a little glob. It's fine.
It might work better to put the glue on the part rather than on the hinge.
Okay, well we can do that too, yeah. I'm going to put a little bit of glue on the foam. Just back there near the back, near the longer of the 2 slots, okay? Blob it down in there, okay? And then slide that guy right on there, okay? All the way back as far as it'll go. Then I take my finger and I kind of wipe the glue around. Okay. Get any of the excess glue that doesn't look like it's going to make contact with anything. Let's get that off of there. Because airplanes, you want to be as lightweight as possible. And that reminds me of an old quote from a famous airplane designer named Burt Rutan, who said, if you design an airplane part and you throw it up in the air and it comes back down, it's too heavy. I think he said that, at least anyway. I'm going to attribute it to him. I could be wrong, but regardless, it's kind of a funny little quote. Okay, so I'm going to rotate my hinge back and forth to make sure there's no glue on any of the parts that it shouldn't be on. Okay, wipe some of that off of there. Then my little wooden hinge fell off, so I need to put that back on. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and put some glue in this upper slot here, just a little bit near the back. Okay, a little blob about the size of a BB. I wonder if kids these days know how big a BB is anymore.
They do.
I hope so. A really small airsoft BB, okay? Now I got to slide the hinge back over the straw. Looks like I need to push my straw up a little bit so that I've got room. There we go. Okay, so it's looking like this. And I'm going to rotate that part in, and I want to make sure to get the glue kind of all over so that it makes good contact with the wood and the foam, but I want to keep it away from the straw again. All right, so I got plenty of glue here. I'm kind of spreading it all over the sides near the back. Then I'm going to grab one of my clamps. I'm going to hold this so that I make sure that the piece of wood is all the way back in the little slot push gently, and I'm going to take the clamp here, and I'm going to clamp the back of that piece of wood so that the little orange part of my clamp, okay, spans all the way across the little wooden piece, and that helps hold it flat in the foam. You don't want any part of this wood sticking out from the surface of the foam there. Okay, so I've got it kind of held like that. You can see how the foam, the wooden, slide this over just a little bit. The orange part of the clamp, the little tooth of the clamp there, is spanning over the wood and is touching on the foam on both sides. Okay, same thing over here. It's a little bit more offset on this one, but it's spanning both sides and it's holding it flat. Then we'll set that aside for now. Actually, if you want to be cute, you can put 2 clamps on it and it'll stand up on its own, okay? I'm gonna set that aside and not touch it. Okay, now we're gonna move to the elevator hinge, which is this piece of plastic, this piece of foam here. It's the long and skinny one, and it's got 3 slots in it, okay? So then I grab one of my longer hinge straw assemblies, and again, I'm going to glue it just like this. The part with the single hole goes down in there just like so, okay? And this is the part with the, see, this is the part with the slot and the groove in it, okay? It's going to go down in here just like this, okay? I'm going to go ahead and make my straw line up with the ends of my, well, it lines up with one end. It's not long enough to line up with both ends.
Center on that one.
But just, yeah. So I'm going to push it past just a little bit. Okay, so roughly the distance from the end of the foam to the straw and the end of the foam to the straw is approximately the same on each end. It doesn't have to be exact. It doesn't affect its function, but you don't want it too close to either one of these grooves. The end of the straw too close to either one of these grooves, because that's where the hinge is going to mount in a minute. Okay, so I'm going to pull this back out. I've got the straw where I want it, or the axle. I'm going to put a little bit of glue on the back side of this hinge, or this slot here. All right. Ooh, man, we got plenty there. Got a little carried away, so I got more glue than I need, but that's okay. So I got a big glob of glue down in my groove. You might be able to see it there, okay? Then I'm going to slide this part in. Okay, and the glue squishes out. So I'm going to kind of wipe this glue around, and it kind of helps to make the glue make contact with both the foam and the plastic piece. When we talked about these are called fillets. Oops. Okay. All right. Now, do I want to clamp this? I probably do want to clamp this, don't I?
On the 2 wood pieces. I would
The 2
clamp
wood
the 2
pieces,
wood,
yeah.
And they'll kind of keep the plastic piece in
All right,
place.
and again, we're going to take one of the long wooden pieces. Actually, let me put my glue on first. One of the long pieces, get 2 of your long pieces ready here, right in front of you. All right, a little glob of glue in the back end, away from the straw. Oh gosh. All right, so I got a whole lot of glue down in there that time. Didn't mean to. I'm gonna take my glue tool and I'm gonna transfer some of that glue to the other end. Okay. All right, so now wipe my glue tool off so it doesn't get too globbed up with glue. So I grab one of the long pieces.
Looks like you have a little drip back there.
Slide it over the, yeah, I'll get that in a second. Slide it over and push it all the way down so that holds the straw parallel to our foam. I'm just going to transfer a little bit more glue. And I wound up with a lot more glue than I needed. So even when you're trying to be careful, you can end up getting more glue than you want. Okay, so I got one of my wooden pieces in and it's pushed all the way down. And in a second, we're going to put a clamp on each one of these. And the other piece goes in and pushes it all the way down. Okay.
Before you go on to the next step,
Mm-hmm.
we've got at least one person who's behind, so maybe you want to
Okay.
just briefly review everything we've done, and then we'll take a
We will.
potty break.
We'll take a short little break here in just a second, so that everybody can catch up. I'm just wiping off some of the excess glue right now. Then I'm gonna take my clamp, and I'm gonna clamp it onto the wooden part, just like so. See that? And just like we did earlier with the rudder piece. Same thing here. Okay, I'm inspecting to make sure my straw is parallel to my foam, and it all looks pretty good. All right, and I'm happy with that. So I'm going to set that aside. Okay, so let's go back and review real quickly. We've got our 2 wing pieces here. Okay, and it's looking like the glue is, or the foam is pretty tight on that. All right, just checking to make sure everything is still lined up.
And if you showed them what we're making.
Yeah, the airplane's right here. In fact, let me get this out of the way. Oh, I'll tell you what, Keith, this might be a good time to talk about the evolution of this plane.
Yeah, all right.
So now, a lot of times when you build things, the end product doesn't look like what you started in the very first model, and it's called prototyping. Okay, and Keith is the one who actually designed this kit. He's a much better airplane designer than I am, so he may be able to chime in here. But this is his very first attempt. And if you'll look, you'll notice there are differences between that one and this one. This is the finished product here, okay? And you can see some, I don't know how to hold these, so I can't see the screen, so I don't know.
You're
okay,
good. Yeah.
But go ahead and explain a little bit about
So if you'll look at the first one,
right here, this one.
that one, yeah, that was built based on, I was trying to limit the amount of foam that I used.
All right.
And ended up that it was too heavy and the wings were too stubby. It didn't have enough lift. It was going to be tough to balance. But building that one is what showed me what I needed to change to get a good one.
Right.
So the next one,
So you learn from this. Yeah, there's a lot of wood on this.
yeah, that one turned out to be too heavy
This,
and
I can feel it's very heavy.
yeah, kind of a flying brick. So I
Right.
was like, all right, well, I know this one doesn't work. I know what I need to change. So then
we went from that one to this guy.
I came up
Which
with, all
obviously,
right,
let
I
me
need
hold
to,
these both up. This is the second revision. Okay, and you can see how obvious the difference is the length and size of the wings, right?
yeah, the wing got bigger, added an airfoil, added a spar because it was a bigger wing, and then slimmed up the fuselage. If you turn it sideways, the fuselage is not nearly as tall as it was before.
Right.
And there's a big cutout in it. So I tried to minimize the amount of wood.
Cutout right here.
Yeah, add additional wing area. So this one flew good enough that I knew I had the basic parameters of the airframe kind of worked out. Now I just needed to add control. So that's when the one in the background over your right shoulder came in. This was the attempt to
this guy right here
to let us have movable control surfaces and hinges. And so
let's
you
take a
notice
look at that.
each one has a couple of hinges.
Yeah, I can see. I can turn this. All these surfaces here that can move are called control surfaces. These are the ailerons. This is the rudder, and this is called the rear stabilizer.
Yeah.
Okay, and you notice we can turn these and hold them in position like this. Okay, so that's actually pretty stout. It's not going to move anywhere, and that becomes important later on when you're trying to make your plane fly and make it fly in certain directions or have certain motions. Okay, same thing with these. Yeah, now the difference is between this version and this version is what, Keith?
Well, the hinges worked, but I found out I didn't need that many of them, and each hinge is quite a bit heavier than the equivalent wood piece.
Right, it sure is.
So I basically just took some weight out of it to get to the finished product.
Yeah, so we've got the hinge. The purpose of the plastic hinge is it holds it in at the angle you set it at. And all the wooden hinges do is to provide a pivot point. So it just kind of holds us in while the 3D printed part actually holds it in its position. Okay.
And of course, like anything, there's anybody who's designed anything will tell you it's never done. So if there's a point where you stop, but you're not really done. You say it's time to start getting these out the door. So we stop. But of course, there are things I would change. If we had to go through another round of revisions, there are some things that I would do differently.
Right. Now, why in the world do we have a big glob of clay in the front end of this, Keith?
Balance is critical to the airplane. At the end of the lesson today, I took one of these out to Jacobson Park and did some flying, and I show you how I tuned it and set it up to work. And getting the balance right is a critical part of that. So that's why the clay is there. Clay is very dense and relatively cheap. So it's a cheap, dense substance that we can easily throw in there to get the weight we need.
Cheap
And
and
where we
dense.
need.
That sounds like somebody I knew in college.
Yeah, few of those around. Huh?
Okay. Okay. So hopefully everybody's caught up, and we're going to move on to the next step.
Should we let them?
Oh, we want to take a break for a minute?
Let's let people take a potty break. We've been going for 40 minutes.
Okay. Good grief. It's already been, yeah. All right. Let's take a 5-minute, 10-minute break. 5-minute break. Just go to the bathroom. What do you think? 5-minute break, and we'll be right back. See you in a few minutes. Okay, we are back. Hopefully everyone's caught up and we'll continue on here. So the next part I want to grab is the fuselage here, okay? And we're going to get this long, funny piece here that looks like a really fat, wide Y. Okay, that's called the spar. And it's going to go in right in through here. So first I'm just going to test it. We get up on a close shot here. It slides in and then slides back into that little slot that I was telling you about earlier with the foam and the wood. Okay, so we're still going to have space through here. Okay, because we're going to put another part in there in just a second. Okay, so that's where it's going to go. So what you want to do, let's pull this back out. Okay, I'm going to put a little bit of glue down in that little pocket that is formed by the two side wooden pieces where the L and the R. So I'm going to just drop a little bit of glue down in there. Okay, I don't need a whole lot. There we go. Okay. This glue is nice and thick, so it doesn't flow very well. So I'm going to kind of work it down a little ways with my glue tool. All right, so I've got glue down in that little pocket there. I'm going to insert the spar. Okay, kind of wiggle it, and then then I'm going to set it back in that little pocket. And the next thing I'm going to do is also insert this funny little piece here that's a shorter, fatter Y. Okay, that's called the Dihedral Brace. Okay, so I want to put a little bit of glue on the spar. Let's see, I want to test fit that first. Okay, so it's going to slide in, and then it's going to drop all the way down. Okay, and the bottom of the spar should line up. Get this right on there. See, the bottom edge of the spar here should, or the top of the Dihedral Brace should line up with the bottom of the spar. Okay, see that little right along there, right along there. So I don't want to put any glue on the Dihedral because it doesn't make contact with anything. But I'm going to put a little glob of glue down in this hole that's right in front of the spar. And I'll tap my glue so it drops down. Okay, so I've got a glob of glue in there. I'll take my glue tool and kind of spread that out a little bit.
Can they see me?
I don't know. Sorry, I'm clear off the screen here. I'm watching what I'm doing and I'm not watching what I'm doing on the screen. So sorry about that, guys. Okay, so I'm just kind of working that glue in that little pocket around so it gets on all the surfaces. Okay. And then I'm going to drop the funny looking little Y piece, the Dihedral Brace, in and all the way down. Okay, and of course the glue squishes out. I wipe all the glue off, and I want to make sure that everything is lined up as it should be. And I'm going to set it down and I'm going to look at it from the top. And I want to make sure that it's as perpendicular as it can be. Now this piece of wood here, this spar, actually has a little bit of a curve to it, so I'm going to have to learn how to deal with that later on when I put my wing in place. I'm going to have to bend it around, but I want to make sure it's as perpendicular as I can get it here. And I'm just going to set that aside and let that kind of dry a little bit. Okay, so there's that. Let's take one more quick look at it to make sure everybody's kind of understands what's going on here, and it's going to give some time for people to catch up if they're a little bit behind. Okay, see, I got the top part of my Dihedral is lining up right with the bottom part of the spar. Okay, and then when I look at the spar from the top, it should be as, right angle here, perpendicular as possible. Now you notice mine has a little bit of curve in it, and there's not much I can do about that right now. It'll straighten out when I put the wing section on, but just try to get it to sit as perpendicular as possible. And there we go. Okay, so that guy will balance. I can just set that off to the side. It'll balance on its own. Okay, looks like a plane with little baby wings. Okay, the next thing are the two aileron hinges, and those are the other two parts here, these rectangular parts that have L and R on them. Okay, I'm just going to start with left because I just happen to have that one here. So I grab one of my long straws. Get my rear stabilizer out of the way. Okay. I push the straw to one end, about like that, maybe a little bit closer to the end there. Okay, I'm going to test fit. Now, this is where you have a choice to make. If you want that little tab to be on top, you need to put it in such that when you stick it into the wing, it will be facing up. And it's not important, it doesn't affect the performance any. This is just a personal little choice of mine. And we want the L facing down. Okay, so here's my left wing, right? Okay, this part is going to go in right here like so. Okay, and you can see I got the both L's are facing in the same direction. All right, this part's going to fit in here like this. I've got to move my straw over just a little bit so that it goes in. Okay. So it fits like this. Now you notice I've got my little tab on the bigger half of the blue hinge. Right now is on the same side as the L and the L. Well, I don't want it that way. You can do it that way if you like. It's perfectly fine. But I want to have it so my little tab is on top. So I'm going to pull this back out and I'm going to slide it to the other end. I'm going to turn it over. Okay. So now when I assemble my wing, that little tab will actually be on top. Okay, if this doesn't, if you're not sure what I'm doing, don't worry about it. It doesn't make a bit of difference as far as the performance of the airplane. This is purely a aesthetic choice on my part. Okay, so now I've got the L here.
Aesthetic means.
Aesthetic means how it looks. A little visual thing. Okay, so I've got this part ready. I'm going to go ahead and glue it now. So do the same technique I used on the other two parts that have hinges. A little bit of glue at the back end. Oh, that was perfect. I didn't squish it too far and I didn't get too much. I'm going to spread that out just a little bit with my glue tool. Keeping the glue away from the back end of the parts where the straw will be where it rotates. All right. I'm going to slide this down in here like so. There we go. I'm going to wipe the glue around, make a little bead, a little fillet of glue at the edge. Okay, do the same thing on the back side, or the bottom side. Wipe off all the excess glue. Okay, so I've got that one seated. And I've got my straw positioned so that it's right flush with the end of the foam there. Make sure it's like that now, because if you have to push it later on, you may disturb the glue joint. You don't want to do that. Okay, so here it lines up with the other end there too. So now I put another little glob of glue in the slot on the other end. Okay. Spread this one out. Keeping it away from the straw. I'm going to come about halfway up that slot there with the glue. Then I take one of my long wooden hinge pieces like we've done before, hold the straw out of the way. All right. I slide my little wooden piece up there and into the groove. A little bit of glue squishes out, but that's perfectly fine. I'm going to rub that around, then I'm going to steal one of my clamps off of an earlier piece, the rudder. It's probably had enough time now to firm up. And I'm going to do my same little clamping technique that I've done before. Okay, like so. And that one's ready to go. So I'm just going to set that off to the side.
Can they easily tell the difference between the long wooden hinge and
Yes, it's obvious. I mean, look, I'll just right now show them. The long one and the short one, you can see that there's an obvious difference in the length, okay? That's the short one, this is the long one over here. A little far down the bill to talk about that, but anyway, that's my fault for not doing that earlier. Okay, I'm going to do the other one, the one that says R now, okay? Same thing. I'm going to get my right wing, And I'm going to check it to make sure that the hinge is oriented in the same direction. So I need to be over here like this. No, 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 no. Like so. Okay, because it's going to go like this when I turn it over. Yeah, and that's what I want. Okay, so again, I'm going to line the straw up. You know, this straw is just a tiny bit too long. I'm going to trim this guy down with my little pocket knife.
So what else could people use if they don't have a handy?
No, pair of scissors, but they shouldn't have a problem.
And it doesn't matter. If it's a little bit long, the foam will deform enough to get out of the way, and the straw itself doesn't move. Right. Everything moves about the straw, so you know any interference really isn't going to affect the performance.
Problem. All right. So now I'm going to glue my my hinge in. You know what? That time I didn't get any glue to squish up, so I'm actually going to put a tiny little bit on. Whoops, that wasn't a tiny little bit, but anyway, to help strengthen that joint there. Wipe all the excess glue off. Same thing on the bottom, just to kind of help strengthen that little joint. A little glue fillet. Oh, darn it. Okay, so I've got a lot more glue there. I'm going to transfer some of that glue to this slot down here on this end. Make sure that hinge is pushed all the way back.
Make sure they can hear you.
All right, a little bit more glue in this end down here, and put the hinge on, and then we'll be ready to do something completely different. We'll be done with the gluing for a few minutes.
Oh, yeah, one more thing.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we still got the horizontal stabilizer to go. All right. Wipe the glue there, wipe the glue there. I'm going to take another clamp off of my rudder because it's probably pretty firm by now. That's been a good, gosh, probably 45 minutes. It's probably pretty stout at this point. Okay, and I've got it clamped on there. I'm going to put it over here with my other one. All right, like that. And then the last thing is to take this part, which we glued earlier. It's the one with this little, it's got 3 hinges on it. Take the clamps off. All right, we're going to need those again in a minute, so let's don't put them too far. Then I'm going to glue it into this rear stabilizer part right here, like so. Okay, so that's how it's going to fit, just like that. And you'll notice the slots are offset, okay, which is the way they're supposed to be, so that the other wooden hinge fits down in there and doesn't interfere with the wooden hinge that's already on the straw. So the next step now, I'm going to go ahead and put, kind of got to do all 3 of these at once, don't I, Keith?
You do, yeah.
So I'm going to go ahead and slide a long wooden hinge onto each end. Like so. Okay, so I got the 2 hinges there. One right now. Let's see if they can stand up so you can see them. All right. Little wooden hinges. They go right next to the wooden hinges that are already glued in. Okay. I'm going to set that down for a second because I got to put glue on this part. Looks sort of like the Batman thing, doesn't it? Okay. So a little bit of glue down in the bottom here. It's a much wider groove, so it's a little bit easier to get the glue in there. In fact, it's going to take a fair amount of glue. Fill that up. And I need to put glue in all 3 of these little slots before I stick the other. I guess you can do it either way, but we're going to go ahead and put the glue in. This glue is so thick that it won't flow, so I don't have to worry about it dripping on me, coming out of the little hole there. I got plenty of glue there, didn't I?
When he's whispering like that, can they hear him? They can hear him.
It's a model of the marvel of modern technology there. They can hear everything. Okay. So now this gets a little tricky because we've got a lot of moving parts here. But I'm going to go ahead and slide the little plastic glue part in. Then I kind of almost all at the same time, I got to get all 3 of these parts lined up and pushed in. This is a little tricky here. Just take your time. Get all 3 of them pushed in like so. Get back over here to the middle. I'm always working off to the side. Push it back. Then I'm going to grab one of my clamps. Clamp that wooden piece. Now my straw has a little bit of bend to it, so I'm going to have to actually hold it in to get that little wooden hinge part to go all the way down in that groove. And I hold it in there like that. And I'm just going to do a little, maybe I'd be very careful about making sure that everything's loose and still moves. Okay, so we're good. So we're parallel. The wooden parts are pushed back as far as they can go. That looks nice there and there. Okay, and that's our rear or horizontal stabilizer. You know what? I'm going to put just a tiny bit more glue. Literally just going to span it right over the top of this blue hinge here and just kind of spread it around because I want a nice strong joint there. Kind of spreading it around a little bit. Okay, same thing on the front here. Now stay away from that slot there because we're going to need it to be clear in a little while because that goes into the back of our fuselage. Okay. There we go. All right, I want to set that aside and let that dry. And now, put the glue away for a few minutes. We're not done with the glue, so don't put it away too far. And make sure to hang on to all your little wooden hinge parts. You don't want to lose any of those. And there, by the way, now we're going to sand the front edge or the leading edge of our airfoil here. Okay? The first thing you need to do that is you got to peel the paper off. Okay, there's a little layer of paper on the top of the little part that looks like a knife. Okay, just peel that all the way off, and it should peel off pretty easily. If you start with the pointed end, the way the foam melts back from the laser makes a nice little tab of paper sticking out, so you can very easily grab it and pull the paper off. I'm just going to go ahead and do it to both of them right now. Okay. So I got that off of there, so I should have exposed foam on both of them. All right, ooh, bank shot. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to sand a curve into the front edge of this to give it more of an airfoil shape. Remember, as we saw from the picture earlier, we want to curve that. And so the way I'm going to do the technique I'm going to use is I'm going to set it on the edge of a table. All right. And I've got this leading edge of the, let's pull this around just a little bit. Is that all right?
I've got a...
You got a better feed for that?
Huh?
Don't touch that, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm on the back edge of the table here. I've got my sandpaper. I'm just going to kind of sand at a 45-degree angle. Okay? You can go up and down or back and forth. Either technique will work. I'm going to fold this over so it's a little stiffer. Okay, and I'm going to sand and sand until that's nice and round. And now this is going to take a few minutes. So I'm going to get everybody started And then we're going to take a little bit of a break, about what, 15-minute break?
Yeah, probably 10 minutes.
10-minute break while you all are sanding, because there's no need for you to sit here for 10 minutes to watch me do this. And we're just going to sand and get that leading edge there, the front edge with a nice curve on it, okay? And there we go.
Oh, there you go. They've got a
Where's
picture.
there? You got the picture of the airfoil up? Okay. If you want to do the bottom, you can do that too, but let's hold off on that for now. Eventually, to do the bottom, you'll have to take the paper off the bottom. That's a little bit bigger job than we want to get into right now.
And before.
But go ahead.
Before you go to the break, tell them that when we come back from break about how much longer do we have on the project.
Okay, well, it's not, yeah, all we have to do now is basically assemble. It's what, another 10 to 15 minutes?
Yeah, we're past halfway.
We're way past halfway. So when we come back from break in a few minutes, we'll be not too much further and we'll be done. So why don't we go ahead and cut the break, and we'll see you guys in a few minutes. Okay, we are back, and hopefully everyone is caught up now. If you haven't quite finished sanding on the edges of your foam, that's okay. We'll get to do that. But what we want to do now is grab the fuselage, okay, and the little piece, the rudder here, we're going to assemble that part next. And it goes right in here, like so, okay. It's going to look like that. It's the first thing I need to do is I'm going to put a little bit of glue in the bottom here, and the little bottom slot where my plastic part of the hinge goes. Oops. Okay. Spread the glue around like we've done. Ooh, I guess I got a little bit more glue there than I thought. Ooh, it's out of control. Okay, I got a whole lot of glue there that I need to do something with. I'm gonna put some of it up here in this slot because we're gonna need some glue up here in the top part too in just a minute. But spread that glue around. Remember, keep it away from the front edge or the. Well, actually, it's oriented relative to the plane. It's the back edge of that foam there because you don't want it to glue your hinge. Now, take one of the small hinge pieces there, the little short ones, okay? All right, put it on top of your rudder there, okay? And then I'm going to slide the whole thing in. All right, let's just get the blue one in first, and then in a minute we're going to rotate the top one in place. Don't worry if you get glue on your hands. Gosh, I made a mess. I gotta wipe some of this glue up here. Okay, so I get my two hinge pieces positioned. All right, so I've got them in like so. Make sure everything's straight. I'm gonna take one of my hinges from one of my other assemblies and do the same thing I've done before. Okay. So now I'm just gonna let that sit and dry, or get a little tacky for a little while. The next thing I want to do now is grab either one of these two pieces, you know, your ailerons. Okay, I just happen to grab the left one here. I'm going to take the clamp off of it. So I need the left wing part. Okay, they're labeled, right? Remember? Okay. And it fits right in here just like so. Okay, just kind of like what we've done before. It's going to fit right in there like that. So I need another little wooden hinge piece to go in here. I'm going to put the glue on first. Then I'm going to put the hinge piece in. So a little blob of glue. There we go. A little bit on this end. Okay. Spread it around again. And I'm going to slide this part in. Oops, I got to put my hinge on. Okay, we'll slide them both down in there kind of at the same time. All right. So now they're both in there. I'm going to take this clamp and I've got to reach all the way over. Actually, that won't reach. So I'm just going to have to go without that there, right? So I've got it positioned there. I'm going to set it down flat on the table. That's not working too well. Let's have it hang off the edge like that.
They might not have an edge. Any suggestions?
Well, they have an edge of a table, don't they? Yeah, just hang it off the edge of the table. I've got a secondary edge here, but you can hang it right off the edge of the table there. All right, so I'm going to grab my other aileron. Okay, put some glue in some slots here. Okay, and then oops, I did it again. Grab my other long hinge piece and slide it on to the end of the straw there. Now I've got a little bit, yeah, there we go, so, okay. And then I drop them both down in there. Well, you can push the blue one down in there, and then the wooden one you can kind of push in from the back. See how it's just sticking out, and I drop it down in there, okay. Kind of clean up my glue. Spread it around a little bit. Okay. There's that guy. So I got my right and my right are lined up with each other. Okay. Have that hang off the end there. Now let's grab the rear stabilizer, or the tail assembly here. And it's going to go, I'm going to test fit it first. It's going to slide right in that little slot in the back. Okay. See that right there? It slides right. I'm going to test fit it first, make sure everything looks good. Kind of look at it to make sure it's nice and square and perpendicular. Looks like it's not too bad. It's tilted a little bit to the left, but that's okay. All right, pull this back out. Put some glue down along in here. Oops, I'm off the screen again. The glue down along in here. A little bit on both sides. All right, don't put glue on the slanted part here and here. You don't want glue there, just on the flat part. And once again, I got probably more glue than I need. Squish that around and kind of fill up that gap a little bit there. Okay. And then I slide the rear stabilizer in. Okay, push it in, make sure it's properly seated. Okay, so there you go. It's in there like so. You want to make sure it's nice, and see, mine's just a little bit crooked, so I'm going to try to bring it back around a little bit. There you go. Now, here comes the second trickiest part of this whole process, and that is, you should have a couple little wooden hinge parts left over, one little one and one big one. Those are extras, okay? So if you have those there and you're wondering where they go, they don't go anywhere. But hang on to them, don't throw them away. All right, now I want to assemble my wings. Okay, and this is a tricky part because we still have our other parts over here. They're still kind of tender. They're not haven't dried very well. So I'm going to hold the wing clear down here like this. I want to test fit it into the fuselage. And I'm going to kind of push down to bring that spar on through there. Come over here. And then I've got to get that wing to sit all the way down in that little groove. See how I've done that there? See how it fits right along in there? Okay, and then the top part of the spar should be flush with the top part of the K-foil there. Okay, so that's a good test fit there. I'm going to pull it back out. And I'm going to test fit the other one. Hey, uh-oh. I kind of have to hold that hinge because mine's still a little loose there. I'll slide that in. Okay, see now I've got it. What you may have to do, we may have to wait and do this aileron after we've got the wing in there. Or a little piece of tape would hold that if you have some tape. Okay, so I got another good fit there. So I'm going to pull this back out. I'm going to set this back down, hopefully in the next minute or two while I'm doing this other wing. That'll start to grab a little bit. If not, once we get the wings in, we'll put it in place and then leave it alone. All right, so
another thing too, they can pause at this point if they're having the same trouble.
Yeah, we can pause because there's not a whole lot left.
And putting the wings on. Yeah, we can continue. They could pause right here and wait till theirs is dry and then pick up.
Yes, if you want to do that, if you want to stop and let your ailerons harden up, that's fine. And then all you have to do then, the last step is to assemble it. Assemble the wings. And then the hardest step is to leave it alone once you've got that all together. But I'm going to go ahead and finish mine here. You can finish up now or later, depending on how much trouble you're having with your ailerons. So we'll put a little bit of glue here on the foam. I guess I could also put it on the spar. I'm back over here and putting glue along this this groove here. Okay. And I'm going to put a little bit of glue right on the end here where it sits inside the fuselage. And we're almost done with the glue. So I'm going to be pretty liberal with that. Okay, and don't glue it onto the wrong side there. All right, so I'm going to slide this in and down onto the spar. And if you're like me, you're going to get glue. All right, there we go. So it's slid in. I'm going to put all this excess glue, I'm going to try to make a little fillet between the wing and the fuselage. I'm also going to take my 2 clamps and I'm going to clamp just like we've done in the past, right there like so. All right, and that'll help hold your wing on while it's drying. I'm going to put another one down to the other base, and this takes a little bit of kind of holding with one hand. Okay, so I've got 2 clamps on there like so, all right, and that's going to hold everything in place. And I'm going to actually put just a little bit of glue right here in this joint. Ooh, that's a lot of glue. That's all right, it's not going to hurt anything. Right in here can help strengthen that joint. And I'm going to transfer a little bit of it to the back side just because I've got a lot here. I'm also going to put a little bit on the bottom of the spar and the dihedral. Okay, so I'm getting glue there. See, I'm getting glue on there, okay. I've still got plenty of glue over here. So I'm going to grab a little bit more of it and put some more of it on this spar over here. Okay, so there's my right wing. Now, let's hope that this left wing is going to hold long enough for me to get it on here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold it with my left hand. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of glue right on the top of this dihedral. Can y'all see that?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, just a little bit on that little edge there. And we got to get the glue down to the top first. Ooh, okay, we got it. And we are nearing completion of our hand launch glider. Put some glue in this little slot right there.
Just hear the glue give its last.
No, I think there's still a bit more in there. There's just a little bubble in the... Yeah, no, I think there's plenty of glue in these little containers. Yeah, it still feels like there's probably a third of a... All right, spread the glue around. Stick this guy in here like so. Now, that little aileron is just going to have to be allowed to dry on its own. Oh, and the whole darn thing just completely fell apart. Oh, that's not good. There we go. Okay. Got to get my spar up through there. And there we go. I'm going to go ahead and quickly get a clamp on this to help hold this thing together. I'm going to steal my clamp from off of my rudder because it's probably... Okay. And now, I'm going to let that go. I'm going to put this glue underneath here to kind of help support that. And I need some weight on the end of this to hold it. And there it's balanced. Okay. So I'm just going to leave this alone right now. I want this guy to glue and dry up a little bit before I really do any more. And now we're at the most difficult part. Keith, I think we're going to have to tell them about the clay. Well, I guess I can probably stick it in. Now you've got this glob of clay, right? Okay. Now the reason that's there is for weight, for balance. And we talked about that a little bit earlier in this other.
Use the other one that's already dry over there.
Yeah, why don't I just do that? So here's the one that I built the other day. Okay, so I got all my wings and everything's on. What I'm going to do is take this clay and I'm going to kind of make it long and skinny. I'm going to push it through the hole. All right, now the goal is, I got more clay on one side than the other, but that's all right. What I want to do, and I do this, I take the clamps off here because you don't want any extra weight on there. And what I want to be able to do is put my thumb and index finger of one hand right below, or right actually where it says R and L. And it should balance. And you can see I literally got this plane is balanced right on those two fingers. Okay, which means I got just about the right amount of clay on the front. If it was tilting backwards, I would need to add a little something. If it tilts forward, then I'd need to take a little bit of clay away. But I got lucky. And it looks like it's pretty well balanced there. Okay, so now the hardest part of this whole project is to set it down and leave it alone until all the glue dries. So that's where we are. And I think Keith put together a little video that we're going to now look at that shows you how to fly your plane. So are we ready to do that?
Tell me how long it is and what we
This is about a 10-minute video of Keith outside with Sean, right? No, just you. All right, all right. And he's going to show you how to use the plane, where you're going to use the wooden stick and the rubber band, among other things, to show you how to fly your plane. And then when we come back, we're pretty much going to be done. We're going to talk just a little bit briefly and then sign off. So here we go.
Hi, this is Keith with Newton's Attic, and I'm here to talk to you about how to tune and fly your new glider. We're going to start by talking about the 4 forces of flight. Those forces are gravity, which pulls the aircraft down, lift from the flying surfaces that lift the aircraft up, drag from the air pushing against the aircraft that will pull the aircraft back, and thrust, which will push the aircraft forward. Because our aircraft is a glider, we do not have the force of thrust. We're going to use gravity, which will pull our aircraft down to accelerate air over the surfaces and create lift. This will reduce the rate of fall of the aircraft and extend the distance which our aircraft can fly. To control our aircraft, we have 3 axes about which we can move the airplane. The first axis is the roll axis. The second axis is the pitch axis. And the third axis is the yaw axis. By moving the aircraft around these 3 axes using our control surfaces, we can determine which direction the airplane will fly, the rate of sink, and how far it will go. There are 3 different control surfaces on your glider, one of which is duplicated. The first control surface are the ailerons, right here. The ailerons control the roll axis, and they move up and down like so. Generally, you would move your ailerons opposite of each other to create a roll. The second control surface is the elevator on the rear, also moving up and down. The elevator controls the pitch of the aircraft. The third control surface is the rudder, moves side to side. The rudder can affect the yaw of the aircraft. For our initial flight, we're going to start with all control surfaces neutral, that is centered against their respective surface, and we're going to see how it flies. 2 things that we want to check before we do our first flight. One is the balance of the aircraft. You'll notice in the front of the glider,
there is a hole where you can insert clay. You can see the clay inserted in my glider here. This adds weight to the aircraft and determines where the aircraft balances. Now on the bottom of your aircraft you will see two markings, an R and an L. On my aircraft I built the right and the left opposite of what they should be, but it doesn't matter. The distance here is what we're concerned about. If you balance the aircraft on the R and the L markings, then you're going to have a pretty good starting position for what is called your center of gravity. That is, where does the aircraft balance on the wing? Once we have our center of gravity set in a good starting position, we're going to check the wind direction. And I'm out here at Jacobson Park. You can see this nice field behind me. And a good way to check wind direction, I'm going to take a couple steps back here. If you pick up some grass and you drop it, that shows you which way the wind is blowing. Now you want to launch your glider into the wind for the first flight. Now I want you to notice when I launch this for the first flight, I'm not going to give it a heave, I'm going to give it a slight push into the wind, and I just want to see how it responds to its first flight. What I'm looking for is a gradual downward flight. If I get a flight that porpoises, that does this, that means I have a weight problem, usually meaning my weight is too far rearward. If I get a diving flight like this, I have a weight problem, usually meaning that my weight is too far forward. In that case, I would remove weight from the nose. So with all control surfaces neutral, we're going to give it a toss and see what happens. So that first flight looked pretty good. The aircraft was nice and level when it flew forward. I'm going to put a little bit more force on it this time using the hook in the back to stick my index finger against and give it a nice push. Now when I push, I'm going to try to launch it fairly straight and level, maybe a slight up angle, no more than 10 degrees though. If I throw it straight up, it's going to go up, stall, come crashing back down. So I'm looking for either a level launch or a slight up angle. The aircraft flew forward and went a little bit to the left with a slight bank. Now that could have been because of the wind. That also could have been because of the control surface. So what I'm going to do, because it went left, I'm going to induce a slight yaw by moving the rudder to the right. And I'm also going to induce a slight bank by lowering my left aileron and raising my right aileron. What these movements of the control surface will do is cause the aircraft to both bank and turn against what I was just seeing. Let's give it another shot. Okay, you go get it. So that flight had a large amount of banks. That means my control surfaces had moved too much. What I'm going to do for this flight is I'm going to remove the aileron inputs and just use a yaw input to try and counteract that turn. That looked pretty good. Now that I'm happy with how the airplane is responding, I can try a few extra things. One of those is by using the control surfaces in a way that's slightly different from the normal way we'd use them. We have two aileron controls that are independently movable. Because of this, we can change the shape of our wing by moving both control surfaces in the same direction. I can lower them, and if you look, this actually increases the curvature of the wing, and that increases lift. Let's see how that makes the airplane behave. The aircraft flew up right after launch because of the increased lift and landed a lot closer than it usually did, and that's because when I lower those control surfaces, it increases the drag on the airframe. Now the other way I can move these surfaces is I can move both surfaces up. This would be called a spoiler, and if you look, it reduces the curvature of the wing. The wing now has a shape that looks more like this, and that will reduce the lift of the aircraft. So I should get more sink from this throw. Let's see if that happens. The aircraft did not climb after launch. It went straight for a period of time and then dove toward the ground. So I hope you can see now how moving the various control surfaces on your aircraft will affect how it flies. You can experiment with your own. Just remember, if something does happen and it breaks, you've got the glue and you built it yourself, you can always put it back together. Now, for the final test, I'm going to break out the catapult launcher and give it a shot. Now this induces a lot of stress on the airframe, and it makes the aircraft go from a very high-speed flight down to a low-speed flight very quickly. So we usually get some pretty weird responses from the airplane, and it takes a lot of tuning to get a good flight. So don't get frustrated if your catapult launches don't go great at first. Just keep fixing it if it breaks and keep trying till you get what you want. So to launch this using the catapult, I'm going to put the rubber band over the rear hook. I'm going to take my fingers and I'm going to surround the elevator. Now in this case, I have neutralized all the control surfaces except for the rudder, and I'm actually going to reduce it a little bit because the launch speed is going to be way higher using the catapult than what I can get with my hands. I'm going to pull the aircraft back with the stick held straight or even slightly tilted forward. I'm going to stretch it like this as far as I can get it, and I'm going to let it go. So that flight didn't do exactly what I wanted. I'm going to give it a little bit more oomph this time. I'm going to cock to the side a bit, give a longer stretch, making sure it clears my face, and so as I've proven, getting a catapult launch is a little bit difficult. I'm going to keep trying a couple more times and let's see how they go, but I think you get the basic idea of what you're going for. For this one, I'm going a little bit more level over my head. Big stretch. So the landing on that last launch caused a bit of a problem. Don't worry, this is easily repairable. What I'm going to do back at the shop is fill this crack with glue, and then I'm going to put a piece of tape across the top and the bottom, pulling it tightly, let it set up overnight, and we'll be back in business tomorrow. I hope you have a good idea now how to tune and fly your airplane. And as you can see, the hand launches are definitely the way to go for starters. Use the catapult only when you're comfortable having tuned it using the hand launches. Now back to Bill to finish out the live stream.
Okay, we are back, and I hope you enjoyed that little video there. I think you saw that Keith actually crashed his plane and broke it, which may happen to you too. But don't worry if that does, because you can always fix it. And in fact, this is the plane that Keith was flying. All it takes is a little bit of glue, a little bit of patience, and you can fix your plane too. And you can see right here, actually you may not be able to see that. He did such a nice job, but there's a little crack right along there where he glued it back together, and it's good as new. Okay, so now let me show you how to make the launcher that he built. You've got a rubber band in your kit and your stick. Okay, it doesn't matter which end you put it on. Take the rubber band and kind of fold it in half like this, so you've got two loops sticking out. All right. Let me go over here. So I've got two loops sticking out. It doesn't matter which one, but take one of the loops and pull it through the other one. So now I have, whoops, it came apart on me. So I pulled it through, and I should end up with